Are you looking to become a Tier 1 operator in the gaming world? Elevate your games with Black Site Studio Terrain.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Sitrep channel. I'm Oriskany, and we're going to be playing a quick live game of Panzer set in Poland, 1939. I'm joined by my friend Piotr from Poland. Say hello.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, so what we've been doing here is part of our build-up for the commemoration of the 80th anniversary of the beginning of World War II in Europe. And so I've been fighting some battles, Piotr's been fighting some battles, and we're sort of selecting our way through a couple of them and trying to recreate some key moments in the Polish campaign that we can recreate here with war games on the tabletop. The system we're using is a modified version of Avalon Hill's Panzer from like 1971, I think it was first published. Or Panzer Blitz was 1971, Panzer in 74. It doesn't matter. We're playing Panzer in Poland 1939. Here's where I'm going to embarrass myself. So Piotr, if I screw this up, you got to help me out. Battle of Tomaszow Lubelski. Did I even come close on that, or?
Oh, come on! It was really good.
Ah, sweet. Okay. So what we're doing here is we're recreating part of the Battle of Tomaszow Lubelski, where parts of a Polish elements of what was called the Polish Lublin army. Here's the order of battle down here. Was trying to break out of a semi-encirclement. They weren't completely encircled, but they were trying to redeploy to the southeast. They were trying to get to the Romanian border because of reasons. And Piotr, we can talk about that a little bit later if you want. But the long story short is they're trying to get to the southeast, and they're trying to get to the Romanian border. And in their way is part of the German 4th Light Division, not to be confused with the 4th Panzer Division. And the 4th Light Division already has forward elements here in Tomaszow Lubelski. So the Poles are coming out of the northeast, believe it or not. This whole battlefield's going to feel a little backwards. The Poles are attacking, they're not defending. The Poles are attacking out of the northeast, and the Germans are more or less on defense. Again, today is opposite day. The Germans are sort of on defense, and they're defending in the east, while the Poles are attacking out of the northwest, I should say. Did I say northeast before? I'm sorry. The Poles are in the northwest, Germans are defending in the southeast. Again, Romania is down here somewhere. So, Piotr, can you take us through what some of these Polish units were like historically?
Yeah, of course. We're looking here at the Battle of Tomaszow Lubelski. It was fought on the Polish side by the combined forces of the former Kraków army and established on the 10th of September Lublin army. Their battle plan was to move towards Lwów through Tomaszow Lubelski, and this was done because the main force of the Polish units was compromised from the Warsaw Panzer motorized brigade, armored motorized brigade. Had to use German methodology, and because it had almost 80 tanks, which was the biggest, I believe, Polish fielded armored unit during the September campaign, it had to move through roads. So at the beginning, on the 17th of September, the Polish forces destroyed almost 300 trucks just to get fuel for the tanks. Okay. And they were, so to say, hoping to reach Lwów on the fuel they had. And the Warsaw Armored Motorized Brigade was compromised of the first Pułk Strzelców Pieszych. So,
yeah, and you Polish names. I believe their names are in English: 1st Mounted Rifle Regiment and 1st Foot Rifle.
And the 1st Foot Rifle Regiment. Yes, okay. Indeed. And then you had some tank units, so the 11th Fries Tank Company, 12th Light Tank Company, and some other units, including some artillery.
So using your research that you provided, like for 11th Reconnaissance Tank Company, 13 TKS Tankets, 4 of them with the 20mm guns. So what that's going to more or less break out to is 3 platoons. 13 tanks is roughly 3 platoons. So we have 2 platoons of the regular TK3s, and now I've designed just for this game TK3 with a 20mm cannon, with a different range and a different weapons class and a slightly different silhouette that reflects the 4 that you're describing with your 20mm guns. So we are able to get this, everybody. We're able to get the historical research for this campaign, or for this Panzer battle, in some places down to the platoon level. We're getting really down into the nuts and bolts here, as far as what some of these units actually comprise of. And again, that's mostly due to Piotr's research. The Germans are coming on strong, although not really. The reason being is because this is 4th Light Division, not a Panzer Division. They do have tanks, but they are not a full-strength Panzer Division. So the Germans are set up entirely with Mark IIs and Mark Is. Panzerkampfwagen Mark Is. These literally have 2 machine guns in them, and that's it. Anyone who's familiar with Panzerleader can tell you exactly how pathetic these tanks are. 2I, that's infantry attack factor, or infantry attack class, and a range of 2. These tanks are beyond sad. Only slightly better are the Mark IIs. These at least have an 20mm automatic cannon, but there are no Mark IIIs and no Mark IVs confirmed in 4th Light Division. So forget big cats. We don't even really have tanks. We have these tanks that were originally intended for training purposes only, and these tanks which were originally intended only for reconnaissance. There are no actual battle tanks in this force. We have 1 battalion of infantry, all mounted in trucks. That's 3 platoons, 3 companies, so 3 platoons. Bicycles, some PaK-36 anti-tank guns, a headquarters unit, the usual stuff, mortars, infantry guns. However, I didn't put the whole regiment on the table because that would just be absurd. That's a 75mm infantry gun there. So I just pretty much put 1 battalion's worth. This is about 1/3 of what really should be 11th Schutzen Regiment. So, you know what, let me go ahead and...
Well, we have the bicycle Grand Pass, so that's a game changer.
Oh yeah, you watch out for those bicycles. On a slightly more serious note, we have the 50th Panzerjäger Battalion. These are anti-tank guns. Again, this is a very small piece of it. This would be normally 3 complete batteries, each one with a little section or whatever of these things. Basically, there should be 9 of these. There's only 3. Again, the whole battalion isn't here. We also have 2 Sonderkraftzeuge 10/4s. These are the very early attempts to motorize German anti-aircraft. I did research these pretty hard. I found it very, very odd that these things were involved at the very beginning of the war. Turns out they were, however, only on a very, very limited basis. So these things are definitely the exception to the rule. Most German quote-unquote motorized anti-aircraft is a towed 20mm cannon, towed behind a truck or even a horse-drawn wagon. We also have Panzer Aufklärung, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, pretty much armored reconnaissance, Panzer reconnaissance, a bunch of armored cars, all the way including to these, relatively sad KFZ-13s. These don't even have a cannon in them, they just have a machine gun. Some motorcycles and some engineers. And the real thing is what we were missing 2 weeks ago for the Germans, towed artillery. So we have 2 batteries of 105mm light field howitzers, or to use the German terminology, 10.5 centimeter guns. These things are pretty serious. He can fire them either directly or indirectly. If he fires them indirectly, he has to call in a turn in advance, because it's literally a spotting unit finds the target, calls it in on a radio, and that shells don't start landing until about 5 minutes later. So the Germans and the Poles on this particular battlefield have almost switched places. The main town of Tomaszow Lubelski is off this eastern side of the map. Okay, so the Germans are trying to control the objective hexes, The three that I kind of expect them to take are up here at Dubrova. There's no K in there. This bridge hex over the stream they have to control, and this little farming village down here. The Poles again are coming in from the northwest, so I'm expecting that they're going to take this one pretty handily, along with these two towns here in Rogozno. Hopefully I'm saying that right. So there's 7 objective hexes on the table. This is a pretty much Oriskany standard. 7 objective hexes on the table. An odd number is chosen specifically so that always somebody controls more than the other guy. There's always a clear winner. Whoever wins is going to control a solid 4 of the hexes. So again, I'm anticipating that the Poles will take these 3. I'm anticipating that the Germans will take these 3, which means that the money is going to come down to the hill that dominates the battlefield. Who controls that objective hex? But we'll see what happens. Okay, so we are partially through the movement phase on turn 1. The Polish forces have all moved on. Sure enough, I've occupied those first 3 objective hexes. And now Piotr is finishing up his German movement with, okay, we're going to move your anti-tank guns. You got 1 battery of 50th Panzerjäger Battalion. And about where did you want to move those to?
Towards Dąbrowa.
Alrighty.
Using the road.
Yep.
Okay, so the second one will follow, but will go as far as 14-13, I believe. Well, it's quite daunting to attack in this game with all this stuff loaded into trucks.
Yeah. It's when you bail out of the trucks. It's a risk reward. How close do you get? It's tough. Yeah. Right now, most of the Polish guns are so short range, and most of them are still limbered as well. So it's pretty safe on turn 1. Turn 2, that's probably going to change.
It's almost Napoleonic. We can see each other, but we cannot shoot each other. Okay. And the third one will go towards Rabinówka and push to the forest. Oh, no, it will push to the town hex if it can. Okay, so one will go to Dąbrowa and it will stay there, the hex north of the anti-tank gun.
That was easy.
And the second one will take the bridge on 1221.
Got it. He's parked on the bridge. He's ready to defend against something. Good news is he's got very, very long fields of fire in front of him. So anybody that even, I mean, look at this. He can see literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. He literally sees 2.5 kilometers straight down these open farm fields. He technically, he can't shoot at them yet because I'm in a town, but you have a line of sight all the way to these guys. And you can almost shoot that far too. You can shoot 10 hexes. So yes, he's a vulnerable unit with a defensive 1, but where he's sitting, yes, he's sitting right out in the open. By the time almost anything can even come close to hitting him, he'll be able to hit them first. So that's a surprisingly secure position. Okay, so now we're at the beginning of turn 2. The entire German force is now on the table. And now we're going to start with the Polish part of turn 2. So here is our turn sequence. You call in new artillery. This is if you have indirect fire. The Poles do not have indirect fire, so I'm going to go ahead and skip that. After you call in next turn's artillery via indirect fire, you resolve last turn's artillery, if you have any. Again, I don't because I'm the Polish. Airstrikes, I have no airstrikes for the Polish. Whether or not we bring in Stukas for the Germans, we'll see how the game goes. We're kind of designing this game as we go. But for now, definitely no airstrikes. Then we do direct fire. I don't think I have any direct fire. I do have some lines of sight on some German units that are kind of in the open, this open field. This whole battalion is more or less in the open. All these guys can see them, but the guns are still limbered. So the guy in the truck can see them, but the artillery guys can't actually fire right now because the artillery is still being towed behind the trucks. 1, 2, 3, 4 easily. let's get a little aggressive. I mean, why not, right? Okay, so we are now at the beginning of German turn 4. Both sides are a little reluctant to really close to blows here and really start mixing it. That may be about to change, and here's why. Again, there are 7 objective hexes on the map overall. Right now, the Poles are technically winning with control of 4 objective hexes. And the 4th one is the one that I kind of predicted was going to be the moneymaker right here in 2119. To a large extent, the map is going to revolve around this one hex. I do have all 3 of my most powerful tank platoons sitting in there, with 3 more tank platoons kind of behind it in a little bit of a supporting position. Alright, he's setting up what looks like something of an infantry attack that might be coming against me in the future turns. What happened there? From the battalion of 11th Schutzen Regiment. And there's also a lot of attacks out here in the south, which makes me a little nervous. But I am getting a little forward and aggressive with my rifle platoons here. So the Polish turn 4 has just completed. We're now beginning the German turn 4. And the first thing that's going to happen is Piotr is going to secretly write down where he wants his artillery to land next turn. He can call in, you zoom out so we can see the whole map. He can call in artillery on any hex that he can see. So he's got his artillery batteries set up back here. He's got 2 batteries of 10.5s of 102nd Artillery Regiment attached to 4th Light Division. Their range is 32 hexes. They can pretty much hit anything on the map. The problem is he has to see the hex, and he has to wait a turn for it to come in. If he doesn't have the unit in the hex spotted, then it might scatter and it rolls at a penalty, and there's all this other stuff going on because it's pretty much a blind artillery mission.
Okay.
And once he's done with that, guys, we'll resolve the artillery that he called in on turn 3. You call in your next turn's artillery first, per Panzer Leader rules turn sequence. You call in your next artillery first, and then you resolve the artillery that you actually called in last turn.
Okay. I have the hex.
Okay, so we know where or he knows, don't tell me, he knows where his turn 5 artillery is coming in at. Okay, so we go to the next phase, which is his artillery from turn 3. Where does that land now that we're at the beginning of your turn 4?
It was 21, the forest, I don't know, 2111, I believe.
Oh, I know where.
Yeah,
Yep.
2919. 2919, yes.
You're talking about 2119, this one right here?
Yep, and 2218, the second one.
Oh, you split up your batteries. Okay, cool. Who is calling? Okay, I assume that motorcycle reconnaissance platoon is what's calling in the strike.
Yep.
Okay.
That's true.
Cool. Now, neither of those 2 Polish tank concentrations have fired, and you don't have anybody adjacent to them, and they're both in woods. So you can see the hexes, but you can't see the tanks yet in the hex. So this will be a blind artillery mission.
Yep. It's 1 for 2 in direct fire hits target normally, 3 for 5, 1 of the 6 adjacent hexes,
Okay.
and 6 in direct fire widely dispersed.
Okay, so which one do you want to resolve first, number 1 or number 2?
Number 1.
Okay, so roll 1d6 and see if it lands on that hex.
It's 1.
Okay, cool, it lands on that hex. Okay, that is a total of, let's see, that's a 10.5 millimeter, or 10.5 centimeter artillery piece. That has an attack strength of 13. Oh man. Oh no. Oh no. Indirect fire, this is part of the table. Indirect fire, H in parentheses, is always halved against armor targets. No problem there. So that 13 becomes a 7, because you round up. Oh no. Alright, 7 against 2 is 3-to-1 odds. You have to add 1 to your die roll. Now here's the thing, because that's an indirect fire and it's an H in parentheses attack class, it gets to affect everything in that stack equally.
Alright, so I roll 3 dice, yes?
You roll 3 dice, you are on the, let me get it here on the screen, you're on the 3-to-1 column, and you have to add 1 to the die roll.
Alright, so have 2 1s and a 4.
Oh man, 2 1s become 2 2s because you have to add 1 to all the die rolls. So you have 2 1s and a 4, that becomes 2 2s and a 5. So the 2 2s are kills, and the 5 becomes a dispersal. Next, this guy, roll a 1d6 to see if it scatters.
You won't believe it, but it's a 1 again.
Another 1. That's 4 1s in a row. Okay, those Vickers tanks have the same defense factor. So again, roll 3d1. Sorry, don't roll 3d1s. Good grief. I'm already predicting that you're going to roll 1s. 3d6, add 1.
I can roll 3 1.
Here you go. At 3d6, they're all going to add 1 to the die roll.
Okay. 2, 3, and 1.
Oh man. Okay, so the 2 becomes a 3. That's a kill. The 1 becomes a 2. That's a kill. And what was the other one? A 3? The 3 becomes a 4.
Becomes a 4.
That's a dispersed. You're just rolling like a madman today. Look at this. You're destroying all my tanks with artillery. It's not fair. You don't even have those tanks spotted. Alright, so German artillery has proved hella decisive here. Okay, everyone. We are now at the end of German turn 4, where things are about to get very nasty. So we saw previously where Piotr got very lucky with a total of, I think, 4 1s in a row, pretty much, where artillery was landing, and then not only landing, because it was a blind artillery mission, not only landing, but then destroying 2/3 of my tanks and pinning down the third that remained. Whether or not, I mean, yeah, that was definitely lucky, but where it was not lucky, and where he deserves all the credit, is he took advantage of that when it happened. So the artillery goes in, it lands at the beginning of his turn, it destroys most of the Polish tanks, it pins down the ones that are left. That's why they're sort of, cocked over at an angle here. And not only that, but then he swarms that position with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rifle platoons. There's a 6th one coming up in reserve. That's almost 300 German riflemen rolling up on us. And what they're going to do is they're going to attack these tanks while they're still pinned down and can't shoot back. So this is what Panzer calls the close assault phase of the game. And here is where things are going to get nasty. I did not have a chance to shoot back because, again, no opportunity fire. My guys are all dispersed. They're all pinned down in other games. So now we're going to do some close assaults, and here's where it gets grim. So, what do we got? All right, we're going to start off with close assault number 1. We're going to attack this this heavier tank unit here first, Piotr.
Yep.
All right, you have to be adjacent to do a close assault. You can close assault him with all 5 if you want, or with these 4 if you want.
I will put the close assault with this 4.
Okay, this is going to be a slaughter. I'll say it straight out. So close assault is the only time an I-class unit that's infantry gets to attack an armored target. So they're going in there with Molotov cocktails, grenades, sticky bombs, and who knows what. Stick grenades into the tracks. This is literally a close assault battle. And we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4 platoons of German infantry, close to 200 troops, between 160 and 200 troops attacking 5 tanks that are already bailed out, pinned down, screwed up, damaged. This is going to be a totally one-sided battle here. 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 8 against 2. That is 4 to 1 odds, because you got 2 each. That number up there is the attack, versus my defense, which is only a 2. That's 4 to 1. That's bad enough. However, it's also a close assault. When you close assault, you get to subtract 2 from the die roll. Also, I'm dispersed. You get to subtract another 1 from the die roll. You're subtracting 3. So you can see here on the 4 to 1 table, even if you roll a 6 that gets read as a 3, that's easily a kill territory. You do have to add 1 for woods, so it's a net subtract 2. But again, even if you roll a 6, the worst you can do is a modified 4. That's deep into kill territory. You literally don't even need dice. Panzer Leader is a game that reward tactics to the point where if you're smart enough and if you're lucky enough or whatever, you don't even need dice. You can take randomness right out of the game entirely. And you can get to the point where you can just get free attacks. So, That's an automatic kill, and that's the end of that close assault. Here's the one where I might stand a chance of survival. You have this one
Oh
platoon
yes.
that didn't cat attack. He's going to attack this Vickers tank here. He also has a 2 in defense versus your 2 in attack. These guys can't reach him. So it's only 2 versus 2. That is 1-to-1 odds. Subtract 2 from the die roll for being a cat attack. Subtract 1 from the die roll for me being dispersed. Add 1 for attacking into woods, because I am in woods. So it's a grand total of 1-to-1. You get to subtract net 2 from the die roll. So whenever you're ready, roll a d6 and subtract 2 from the result. And we're on this column right
Right.
now.
So it's a 3.
A 3 becomes a 1. A 1 is read as a DD. So what's the difference between a D for dispersal and a double D? A double D kills a unit that is previously dispersed. Unfortunately for my Poles, those guys are previously dispersed. That's another kill. That one wasn't so easy, but you just barely got the roll required to wipe out that unit of tanks. And that's it. But guys, that is how you do a close assault. That was a perfectly executed close assault. You had a motorcycle recon going forward, doing exactly what motorcycle recon is supposed to do, not attacking anybody, staying under cover. He's there in that woods tree line there, spotting enemy targets, calling in artillery, and then once the artillery splashes, you have the better half of an infantry battalion right behind, launching an immediate close assault on the remains of that defensive position. So again, that's how it's done, guys. That is literally a textbook. And for the record, because this is going up on YouTube later, I did not coach him at all through this. He did get some lucky die rolls, but he had no help from me as far as tactics or hints or anything like that. That is literally how you do it. Okay, we are now in German turn 5, where things are finally close enough to where people are getting impolite. Let's go ahead and say that. But I pretty much shoved 200 infantry up this slope, pretty much into the jaws of this crossfire of opportunity fire. So these 2 platoons of Mark II's fired, and this platoon of Mark I's fired, and this platoon of German rifles fired, and pinned down 1 infantry unit. Now I've got more guys coming up from behind. That was kind of seems like a dumb move, but what it did is it forced him to reveal some positions. And the Polish fire phase is coming up, and I have some pretty heavy guns that can see these hexes. I just have to wait until I can, actually see something. Cool. So, meanwhile, what we're going to do is, so what Piotr's doing in the meantime is to finish out his turn, he's doing some overruns with some Mark 1s. So, 3 platoons of Mark 1s, the smallest little puny tanks in the German army, but they're going to overrun some Polish rifles here in Hex 1627. We have 6 against 12, becomes 1-2, jacks up to 1-1 for overrun, subtract 2 for overrun. 1-1 table, he has to subtract 2 from the die roll. So make 1 roll, and you subtract 2 from that die roll. Mr. Piotr, at your convenience. See how this overrun attack goes.
Alright, so let's do this. It's a 2.
A 2 becomes a 0. A 0 means that stack is destroyed. Okay, he can't move through a green hex side, so he has to move north first. That costs him 2, he has to go up that slope. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, where's he going now? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, yeah, he can do that. And nobody can say boo about it because these are all infantry weapons. All these, this sounds crazy, guys, for people watching on YouTube later. All these guys have only machine guns. That's the reason why we're able to pull off these impossible maneuvers. If you tried this in pretty much any theater other than Poland or the very opening battles in the Desert War, like Operation Compass, you would get killed so fast because these guys actually have real guns in them. H's, A's, or whatever, who knows what. But because everyone's, well, not everyone, but so many people are walking around with just machine guns in their tanks and armored cars, yeah, you're never allowed to attack The only time an I-class weapon is ever allowed to attack an armored target is in an infantry overrun. I'm sorry, an infantry close assault. Like we saw down here. That's the only time an I-class can ever attack an armored target. And even then, it's risky.
The victory point hex.
Okay.
Hex.
That hex is now fully loaded.
Yep.
That's the problem about hex. That's the problem with rec counters. They use up space. You're only allowed to have. This is mostly for the YouTube audience. You're only allowed to ever have 3 units in a hex. Period. Rec counters count as a unit for sacking purposes. However, there's a footnote to that rule that says that in the new version of the rules that rec counters can never completely fill up a hex. You can always have at least 1 live unit in a hex, even if there's 3 rec counters in there. Because here's what people were trying to do back in the 70s. They would do exactly what I did. They would jam 3 like empty half tracks in there, force you to blow them up, and then say, oh, you can't go in that hex because it's full of rec counters. They would build an impenetrable wall of rec counters, and that was like their gamey, it's like so cheesy. But people used to do that.
Yeah.
So they amended the rules so that you can always put at least 1 combat unit in a hex, even if it's filled. But now that hex is totally filled. Technically, it has 4 units in there, 3 recs and 1 rifle platoon, but you're always allowed to put in at least 1. Rec counters are never able to completely fill a hex.